Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us today for our webinar, Utility Experiences with Residential EV Rates. My name is Richard Farinas. I'm a research manager here at SEPA, and I'll be your moderator for this afternoon's webinar. I want to thank those of you who submitted a pre-webinar question. We're going to try and engage as many of those as possible throughout today's program. We've got a great group of speakers, and we're eager to jump right in. But before we do, sit back, relax, as I describe today's learning experience for you. Our webinar platform is designed with you in mind. It allows you to enter questions, download slides, reference materials, and speaker bios, all with the click of a mouse. At the bottom of your screen are additional widgets you can use. All the windows in the platform can be moved or resized by you for a tailored experience. You can expand the size of the slides or maximize it to full screen by clicking the arrows in the top right corner. If you have any questions, please submit them in the widget titled Interact with Us on the left of the presentation slide window. We'll do our best to answer your questions, and it's okay to submit your questions as they come to you throughout the webinar. If your question is for a specific speaker, please note their name in your question, and we'll do our best to answer as many as possible after the presentations. Today's webinar recording and slides will be sent to all registered attendees this week, and we encourage you to download any resources, including today's slide deck, the report, and other reference materials in our resource list window titled Takeaways. We hope you'll join us for some of our upcoming SEPA events. Our next event will be Solar and Storage Northeast, taking place February 19th through 20th in Boston. You can find a full listing of SEPA's events at sepapower.org/events. As always, SEPA webinars are free to members. But did you know that you can access recordings of previous webinars by logging into our website and heading to the on-demand section of our Knowledge webpage? Now, let me introduce the speakers for today. I'm pleased to introduce Bill Botigi, General Manager of Braintree Electric Light Department, Lindsay McDougall, Electric Vehicle Program Manager at Austin Energy, Jeffrey Lehman, Electric Transportation Program Manager at AEP, and Tony Lee, Electricity Consultant at the Brattle Group. And before we begin, for those of you not familiar with SEPA, we're a membership-based and education-focused nonprofit organization working towards a carbon-free grid by 2050. Our mission statement is to facilitate the electric power industry's smart transition to a clean and modern grid through education, research standards, and collaboration. In order to achieve this smart transition to a clean and modern grid, SEPA will lead the electric power sector's collaboration around 4 areas of focus, titled our Pathways. Today's webinar falls within our Transportation Electrification Pathway. To learn further about the SEPA Pathways and our work within transportation electrification, I encourage you to visit our website and see our recent reports on rate design, managed charging, and distribution system planning. And finally, as a SEPA member, there are a number of ways to get involved. One of these is through our SEPA working groups, which are designed to give members an active role in the results-focused work we do. Working groups hold virtual meetings throughout the year, and they offer members an opportunity to be a part of developing clear solutions to the biggest challenges around the transition to a clean and modern grid. If you're interested, we encourage you to please follow up after the presentation and be in touch with us. And without further ado, I'm going to hand it off to our first speaker, Tony Lee.
Hey everyone, it's a pleasure to join this panel of speakers today. My name is Tony Lee. I'm a consultant at the Brattle Group in their San Francisco office, and I've been doing a little bit of work with my colleague Ryan Hledik, who unfortunately wasn't able to make it today. Together with the Smart Electric Power Alliance, we, as well as Erica Myers and Richard at SEPA, plus Lauren Burke at NLX, we worked together on a paper that was released in 2019 with SEPA titled Residential Electric Vehicle Rates That Work. And in this presentation, I will be presenting some of the high-level findings to kind of provide a landscape of EV rates, specifically those that are time-varying in nature. So to kind of begin at the highest level. About a quarter of residential customers in the United States currently have access to a time-varying rate that's designed specifically for electric vehicles. This varies a lot across states. The highest ones include California at 86%, Michigan at 85%, but there's a whole host of other states that are between 30 to 50% of customers with access to EV-specific time-varying rates. And then in many other states, these rates are not currently yet available to customers, specifically residential customers who own electric vehicles. So in those cases, any sort of additional load due to EV charging would just be reflected as additional consumption under their existing default rate. So with this variation, what we did in the survey was SEPA and Brattle, we conducted a survey of all the utilities who currently offer electric vehicle time-varying rates. And we were able to get responses from 50 utilities, of which 28 were IOUs, 12 were munis, and 10 were electric co-ops. Across these 50 utilities, we, in our sample, we observed that there were 64 different unique electric vehicle rate offerings. The vast majority of these rate offerings were time-of-use rates, though there were a few examples of off-peak credit programs and subscription programs with on-peak adders. So in any case, all of these rate offerings were time-varying in nature. Of these 64 rates, we also obtained enrollment data for 20 of the rates. So what we're showing here in this chart is the percent of eligible customers, eligible being defined as customers who have an electric vehicle, who are enrolled in the utility's electric vehicle-specific time-of-use rate. So of these 20 utilities for which we have enrollment data, we observe average enrollment of around 20%, and most, well, nearly half have reached an enrollment of at least 25%, which means at least 25% of electric vehicle owners in their service territory are enrolled under the EV rate. Obviously, you can see that there's a wide range in terms of enrollment figures across these 20 utilities. And we also observed that most of these rates have been offered for a couple years. So you can find more about the details about the specific rate designs in the November 2019 SEPA report titled Residential Electric Vehicle Rates That Work. Across these rates, we also, across these 20 rates for which we have enrollment data, we also observed some common attributes that led to, or at least were correlated with, higher enrollment. So in this chart, we compare the average enrollment levels across those rates based on a few different categorical variables that represent different rate design or policy design options. So the first one is whether or not the rate was a utility-driven initiative versus a requirement from the commission or from some other policy-making entity. So this led to a 2.4% increase in enrollment. Other important factors included whether or not a specific marketing budget was available to advertise the EV rate to customers, whether or not the EV rate would provide bill savings for the average customer compared to their default rate offering, and whether or not there were any costs associated with signing up for the rate. So these could include the customer having to pay out of pocket for the installation of a sub-meter or a secondary meter in order to enroll for the rate. So these are by no means, you know, conclusions, but they tend to be just loose correlations based on the limited data we have about these rates. So from this report, I think there are a few high-level conclusions that are interesting as we continue to think about the landscape of EV rates as one of the tools in the toolbox that utilities have to influence how consumers choose to adopt electric vehicles. The EV rate design, what we found is that there are a few common characteristics of highly enrolled EV rates that are within the utility's control. The first one would be offering a rate that provides some sort of economic value compared to the default rate offering for the electric vehicle consumer. This most often occurs through a significant off-peak discount, but you know, there are novel rate designs, including one at Braintree Electric, which you'll be hearing about more shortly, which can help attract customers to the EV rate offering. Another important factor is that the EV rate does not impose any additional metering charges directly to the customer. So these tend to hinder adoption based on our analysis. And then lastly, having a great EV rate doesn't matter very much if customers aren't aware of it. And what we found is that utilities that reported having specific dedicated marketing budgets towards their EV rate offerings tended to have higher levels of enrollment. And with that, I will pass this along to Jeff Lehman over at AEP, where he'll discuss some of the experience that utilities have had on the ground in designing and offering these rates to customers.
Great, thank you, Tony. Great to be here with everybody today. So first, as I was very kindly introduced, I am the Electric Transportation Program Manager here at American Electric Power. We are an investor-owned utility in 11 different states. We have kind of two clusters, one in the Midwest and then further out in the West, Oklahoma, Texas, Louisiana, Arkansas. Over 5 million customers. You can see some other stats there on the screen, but just to give you an idea of kind of where we sit in this broader playing field. But excited to go through some of what our experience has led us to. And we'll start actually back in late 2016 when we were sort of reinvigorated to start working on a residential pilot with our employees. So we were given the mandate to go get it done. We were excited about it. So we had a group of folks that came together, sort of stuck our heads up, looked around the industry, and we were looking for a solution. We were looking for, okay, we're going to do it. How are we going to do it? What are other people using? Okay, let's use that. So we went forward with what we considered kind of a known industry solution for a residential program for EV charging. And it was a very valuable experience for us because we found a lot of interesting and different challenges throughout deploying and communicating with those devices, thinking more about how we would potentially bill our customers or implement programs. So that first pilot R&D project actually was important for us in that it forced us to see some of the difficulties that are involved with jumping to a solution before you've really taken a step back and looked at a broader level, widening the aperture, as I've called it here. So that's what we did next. That led us, step one led us to getting engaged, learning a great deal, and it forced us to take a step back and say, okay, we could do it that way. That's one way to do it. What other opportunities are there? So let's look at the whole landscape, starting with a car all the way back to a premise meter. So I don't want to read all this stuff off, but there's a multitude of different ways that we can either interact with the car, interact with a smart hub, go back to classic utility approaches and use whole home TOU rates, more passive implementation. Smart breakers are coming along pretty rapidly. There's a whole bunch of things in that landscape and different ways that we could interact, engage our customers, and help work with them to achieve off-peak charging. Ultimately, that was the goal, right? Not just creating a pilot and doing something, but it was finding a way that we can work with our customers to get them value to charge off-peak, which then provides value to the utility and to all customers. And I'll come back to that point later. So as we were looking at this entire landscape, there were three key things that we were focused on. So rather than starting with a solution, we kind of backed up, started with insights, and specifically insights through these three lenses. One, the customer. So what is this experience going to be like for the customer? How does it impact them? What do they want? What are their expectations? The market, both in equipment, hardware, as well as vehicles, where we're at, where we're going. And then utility. So as I mentioned, the off-peak charging goal, what does that mean to us? What is the value for us in doing that? And putting all these three things together to put better context around how we can do it, why we're doing it, and how we engage with our customers to get it done. So ultimately, what we decided to move forward with, and this is both in Michigan and Indiana, as we filed recently, which are public. But the way that we've decided to approach this is looking at a meter that is specific to the electric vehicle within a household. So that landscape graphic that was shown previously, there was a PEV, not a separate service, but a PEV meter that was within the premise meter for an existing residential household. So that was where we landed for a whole host of reasons that I'm going to jump through right now. So first of all, communications. We, AP, and our operating companies are pretty broadly deploying AMI, as are many other utilities. And that gives us an ability to immediately and automatically have these devices connect in a way that's reliable and that we can count on. That was a key challenge that we found in looking at a more EVSE, a charger-centric program approach. That was a key challenge both in setup and maintenance and reliability. So this device comes out of the box with very robust and reliable communications. So that's a key advantage that it provides. Another one is its accuracy. So sometimes this is overstated, but for us to implement especially rate-based programs, and I don't mean rate-based in terms of investment, I mean rate-based in terms of tariff. Tariff-based programs would have been a better way for me to put that. We do have standards for accuracy. So it's not to say that we can't address PEVs differently at some point in the future with other methods of implementation, but if we are going to execute PEV tariffs, we should have the same accuracy expectation as any of our other measurement devices that we bill with. So the fact that this meets all of the same standards of accuracy was important. It also can be calibrated. So if for some reason we actually need to visit and change the calibration of a meter because it has had some difficulty or due to a customer complaint, we actually have a way to do it. With other devices, we wouldn't have that ability. We just have to replace it. So another automatic benefit that we get out of the box, in addition to communication and accuracy, is the ability to bill. So as I mentioned, that was a key challenge in the EVSE-based approach. We can get data out of it, but is it accurate and can it translate seamlessly into our billing system? And the answer was no. So we wouldn't be able to implement a program like that without manual billing or some significant effort in updating our billing system, which can get very, very, very cumbersome, as other utilities, I believe, would vouch for. So the ability to seamlessly integrate this this new device, this new type of load, and have it automatically work within our billing system without any additional effort or cost was another huge benefit that we saw. So number 4 here is just options for the customer. This gives a lot of different ways that customers can choose to make this work for them. So because we're agnostic in terms of technology and hardware, if a customer of ours has a vehicle that comes with a level 2 EVSE, which is more and more prevalent, and that was identified in our market insights from that previous slide, they won't have to spend any extra money. If that works for them, then all they need to do is plug it in, and they'll have a way to engage in and roll in the program that we have in place. If somebody doesn't have one of those pieces of hardware and they want to buy something very inexpensive, so somebody that has a plug-in hybrid that can only charge at 14 or 16 amps anyways, you can get hardware for approximately $200 that is all that you need, and those customers could make that choice. If other customers are looking for higher power charging or more bells and whistles, additional features within that hardware set, they're free to go out and get those as well. This implementation works with any of those and provides customers with a significant amount of choice. In addition to the customer choice, it gives utilities, us, a lot of different ways that we can implement these programs. So we're starting with a frame of reference for implementing a tariff, so implementing a PEV-specific tariff. But if we wanted to change gears at some point in the future and change to a more demand response-based program, or use a third party to measure and verify, and provide gift cards as an example for successful off-peak charging for customers, we've got the device that has the information that's accurate and reliable and comes back to our existing system. So there's a whole lot of options that we have in front of us that we can choose to do in the future if we would like. That could include something similar to, I think, some of the other speakers that we're going to hear from. If we wanted to provide more of an all-you-can-eat style tariff, that's also certainly possible. So it gives us a lot of flexibility in how we can evolve the program as needed and work with customers to make it a better experience for them. And second to last here is our ability to use this known and trusted source of measurement data and information to analyze and prepare for the future. So one of the items that was listed on that landscape from the previous slide was premise meter disaggregation. Many have tried and many have failed, but that's certainly an area that we'd like to keep an eye on. And if we're enrolling our customers and we have very accurate data, very accurate measurement and data feeds both at the house and at the PEV level, then that allows us over time to really look at, okay, if we were to disaggregate using this algorithm, how accurate would it be? Is that accurate enough? Can it be reliable over time, or does the accuracy swing around significantly with that algorithm? So there's optionality there. On the other end, if we wanted to look at integrating directly with the vehicles, we would also have a reference point. So we have the specific and reliable and accurate meter at the PEV level within the household. So we could take a look at how successful, how reliable, how accurate it is to measure and verify or control through a vehicle, and be able to pull all that data back and study and analyze for that possible implementation in the future as well. And then the last one, maybe the most important one, is cost. So in addition to the hardware cost, I think other utilities would vouch for this as well, but our meters, our AMI meters, are incredibly inexpensive, especially for what you get. They look like a conventional utility kind of piece of hardware, but they're actually very, very, very good at what they do, and they are commodities. So that is an advantage that we have with this approach. So in the vicinity of around about $100 for that piece of hardware is kind of a general number for what we see in the industry. and you can see all the functionality and features that you get with it. And this does not require a separate service. So that's one of the main sticking points with separately metered constructs, is if you're requiring a separate service, now you're requiring much more electrical circuit installation than otherwise would be required. So because this meter can actually go at the end of the new circuit that's going to have to exist anyways, if you're buying a PEV and you don't have a 240 volt circuit where you park, or even if you do, this meter can just go right at the end and will function as is that way. So it doesn't cause any additional electrical costs that wouldn't be borne already as part of this process for our customers. And we can be sure that our network, the mesh network that we're using to serve and pull data from these devices, that's one that we manage. That's obviously secure and reliable, and is not something that we will have to pay somebody else for, and our customers won't have to pay anybody else for it. So we're kind of locking in the costs of that functionality over time as well. So that was really the kind of high-level view of the approach that we've taken specifically to try and make these programs as successful as possible. I probably should mention here that part of that separate PEV meter being able to offer a compelling program for customers is that you can put it in a functional setup where it's providing a discount for customers charging off peak. So your household can stay exactly as it always has been. There's no perceived risk from customers that their bill will go up when they're doing dishes or washing clothes or watching TV. It's just the opportunity for them, because it's metered and tariffed separately. It's just the opportunity for them to move that load into the off-peak periods that we define and benefit from it. They'll end up seeing actually a savings credit on their bill directly correlated to that. As far as rate design, I'll try and get through this really quickly because others, I think, have some very good information on this as well. We really start with the energy cost. So looking at the area that we serve, what does it cost us to provide energy to customers, right? That's certainly an important place to start. What we add to that is, what does our distribution system look like for these residential customers? It's not the bulk electric system. It's really the feeder level. What kind of load shapes are we seeing with residential customers specifically? And when we put these two together, we have an idea of what the actual cost of energy is, plus when we really would like to provide that service to these customers to make sure that it doesn't coincide or overlap with any of our existing peaks that are on those feeders. So we design those tariffs very specifically, much more specifically than a conventional TOU rate, which may have 10 or 12 hour off-peak periods, or maybe longer. So it's much more specific. If you look at our Indiana and Michigan proposals, the off-peak periods were proposed and approved in Michigan so far as 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. So shorter window than normal. Make sure that we keep that away from any of our other distribution anticipated impacts. So putting these two together, the next focus here is on how can this tariff and how can this program benefit all customers. I mentioned it previously, but that's a key part of what we look at. So we don't want to provide the absolute cheapest cost of energy. If we just provide electricity to these customers at our cost of energy during these off-peak periods, then they will certainly benefit and they will see reduced electricity prices because of that, but nobody else will benefit. They essentially suck up all the value of doing that. What we do instead is look at how we can incentivize that load to occur off-peak. So those drivers need an incentive to make sure that that load goes off-peak. But we also want to make sure that there is room based on the off-peak rate that we define so that those drivers are contributing to our system fixed costs. So an example here is in Michigan. Again, this is public information in our filing. We proposed approximately a 7.25 cent off-peak rate per kilowatt hour. compared to the 12 to 13 cent residential rate that was in place. So there's some definite savings by the driver for moving that load, but that 7.25 cents is also not all the way as cheap as the cost of energy. So there's that delta between the energy cost and the actual off-peak per kilowatt hour cost that is contribution to fixed costs from the driver to everybody else, to all of the other utility customers. So the more that they're charging off-peak, the more they're actually helping all other customers reduce their rates, put downward pressure on electricity rates because of their actions and intelligently integrating with the grid. So having that approach where we're achieving an outcome that benefits all customers, even those that don't drive electric, is incredibly important, a definite pillar for us. That's all I have, so I'll hand the baton to Lindsay. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. That was great. I'm Lindsay McDougall, the Electric Vehicles Program Manager at Austin Energy, and I'm going to talk about EV360. It's our residential off-peak electric vehicle charging subscription pilot, often referred to as a time of use program, but it is technically an off-peak charging subscription because there is not a cost associated with some of the time of our rate. So that's just a little technicality there. And next slide, a little bit about Austin Energy. We are community owned since 1895, so we are owned by the community and we are a department of the city of Austin, and we are celebrating our 125th anniversary this year. We serve about 500,000 customers, and these are just some fun images of utility life. We have a mascot named Stevie standing next to the Stevie Ray Vaughan statue in Austin, Texas, and our recent marketing campaign is This Electric Greater Than Gas. And we have a DC fast station deployed, and we're deploying more. And that's a map of our public charging station infrastructure called Plug-in Everywhere. And next slide, it's our overall strategy and vision. So we answer to the City of Austin, the City Council, and they have goals to lead by example to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and to improve sustainability, affordability, and livability in Austin. And we support those goals. So we remove barriers to adoption of electric vehicles, and we reduce CO2 in the transportation sector, which is currently the second largest emitter of CO2. The next slide, I'll dive into the elements of the EV360 pilot, which offers charging options for residential customers with an integrated home and away public charging program. So it is a pilot. We've capped our enrollments to just 100 meters. And similar to the last presentation, it is a separate sub-meter. And I echo a lot of those benefits that Jeff explained to having the separate sub-meter. It is a flat rate. It's $30 a month. If you use more than 10 kW, it is $50 a month. There is a $150 enrollment fee, and it includes access to our public charging stations. So we have over 900 public charging stations in Austin, and this rate, it's this holistic 360-degree, hence the name, home and away charging program. And all of the charging is backed by 100% renewable energy via Green Choice, which is E-Green certified renewable energy. So on the next slide, I'll dive into the details a little bit more. So with EV360 at home, customers have access to unlimited off-peak charging, and these off-peak hours are quite generous. It's 7 p.m. to 2 p.m. on weekdays, and any time on weekends. This time frame does not restrict your charging on the public charging stations. However, you can charge any time on those. So you have access to this rate for $30 a month. And like I said earlier, if you use more than 10 kW, which is the rare circumstances, it's usually limited to people with 2 electric vehicles or a very high-powered Tesla wall power setup. So most of the customers have access to the 10 kW below $30 a month rate, and those who use more get the $50 per rate. And this has significant cost savings for people who drive a lot and who have high overall home usage. So we have a tiered residential rate structure in Austin, and it encourages you to conserve energy. So the more energy you use, the higher your kWh rate. So people buy an electric vehicle, and it pushes them into that higher tier. And we wanted to avoid the perception that owning an electric vehicle was punitive in some way. And so this EV360 program really helps offset the overall home usage. So the next slide, I go over the purpose of why Austin Energy designed EV360. So we have motivation to shift residential charging from peak periods to off-peak period, and that helps us have access to lower cost electricity overall. And it allows us to recover costs. It's a sustainable utility business model. The customers on EV360 are not getting the program paid for by other customers. It is a self-sustaining rate. So some people win, some people lose, but the costs are covered by the customers on the rate. It supports the community utility climate protection goals. By charging at night, you have electric vehicles really soak up that renewable electricity that's available in Texas. We also use the program to leverage advanced data analytics and develop customized marketing materials. This is one of my favorite aspects of this program while managing it. It was really fun. We worked with our data intelligence business department to utilize Tapestry, which is a Esri product that allows us to segment out our electric vehicle population and identify their socioeconomic characteristics. And we were able to market directly to electric vehicle drivers that were more likely to be on a rate like this. So we saved marketing energy by just directly marketing with messaging that data told us they wanted to hear. And it was success. We also used a lot of surveys and other advanced marketing tools. We also wanted to increase satisfaction. We are the sole electric provider in Austin, and so it's important that we have options for our customers. The electric vehicle community was demanding a rate like this because of the tiered rate structure that I explained earlier, and so we responded with this pilot program. And the next slide, I just want to highlight what is going on in the environment, the national environment. 29 other utilities offer a similar rate. But EV360 is unique for 2 reasons. It is a flat rate subscription that features the on-peak period with an extra charge per kWh. So it's $30 a month to charge off-peak, but if you charge on-peak, there's an adder, 14 cents a kilowatt hour in the winter, 40 cents a kilowatt hour in the summer. And number 2, it includes the subscription to Austin Energy's public charging stations. No other utility offers these. And the next slide, it shows our marketing survey results. This was a great quote that we got from that. Superb program supporting environmental responsibility and providing cost-effective solutions to transportation energy. Our customers really like this program. The majority of them are quite satisfied with EV360. And it's successful in meeting the programmatic and financial goals. 99% of the customers on EV360 do charge off-peak. We have one customer who ignores the time and price signals. He does not seem to care about the punitive pricing of on-peak adders. And we have a high overall satisfaction score of 9 out of 10. And yeah, really, really generous customer statements like this is an incredible cost-saving program, likely the most generous in the world. So next slide, I do want to mention that I did publish a white paper on EV360 last summer, so that is available online if you search Austin Energy EV360 white paper. But in that, I do make recommendations for possible program expansion, which we are looking to either expand this program or offer a similar solution. Permits were tricky. We need to work with our city department, our city developmental services department, to create permits specific for this installation because it does require electric work to set up the conduit for the submeter. We need to offer greater support of the installer community. Although we did develop a standalone installer web page, which has all the tools that an installer needs, and I encourage you to check that out on our web page, the installer web page. It has great detail of installation guidelines and even ways to market the program. I see a lot of benefit in bringing them even more into the fold and let them sell this program for us. We need a staff resource plan. I took on the majority of management and administration of the program, and that's not sustainable beyond 100 enrollment. So that's something Austin Energy needs to prepare for. And we want to expand the types of customers allowed to participate in the program. The current enrollment guidelines specify that it must be a single-family home. And we have a lot of multifamily in Austin, so we need to develop some way to include all types of residents. And that's it on EV360. I'd like to introduce Bill with Braintree Electric EV Incentive Program. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. This is Bill Botigi from Braintree Electric. I'll go through for Braintree what Braintree's doing, an overview of the town, an overview of sales in Massachusetts, how that's progressing over the years, why we wanted to develop an incentive program, the details of the incentive program, how we're marketing it, and the progress we've achieved to date. So Braintree Electric was founded in 1892 by Thomas Watson. Everybody knows of him as the co-inventor of the light bulb, of the telephone with Alexander Graham Bell. We're located 8 miles south of Boston. We have 17,000 customers, 35,000 people live in the town. We're vertically integrated from generation all the way through to meters. We have an AMI system. I report to a 3-person light board that's separate from the town of Braintree. They're elected by the citizens in the town. We're also in the high-speed internet and telephone business, and we compete with Comcast and Verizon. So you can see from this chart that the acceptance of electric vehicles in the state of Massachusetts was growing pretty significantly. A big bump at the end of 2018. That's when the Tesla Model 3 came out, as well as the end of a very generous rebate program in the state. So that caused a lot of people to adopt electric vehicles at the end of 2018 to get into that aggressive rebate program. So 2019 was a little slower for adoption and acquisition, but the rebates are coming back in 2020, so we expect to see that pick up again. In Massachusetts, you could see the darker the color here, the more EVs in a town, and you could see that around the metro Boston area, which is on the east there. In the middle of the state is the left-hand edge of that. That's Worcester, and then Springfield is out a little further west. So you can see the biggest adoption is around the city. You can see that little red circle I drew. That's the town of Braintree. So we're pretty good on the scale of things as far as electric vehicle adoption goes. There's been a lot of progress made since we started our electric vehicle incentive program. So why do we want to have a incentive program? We know the electric vehicles are coming, so we wanted to get ahead of it. We've been incenting the cars with our incentive program since 2016. The governor had a goal a couple of years ago of having 300,000 EVs in the state by 2025. That's going to fall short, but they are coming. The good thing for us is increased sales. Our sales have decreased over the last few years, mostly because of energy conservation numbers, and the electric vehicles we hope will boost those sales back up. We also want to influence when customers are charging off-peak, like everyone else, because it is a big benefit to our electric distribution system. So another reason why we want to influence charging is electric vehicles we have a big impact on your load. We use about 7 kilowatts as the average level 2 charger. They're getting higher now, especially with the Teslas. It takes about 10 hours to charge, say, a Chevy Bolt. We want to make sure that happens overnight. So just sort of a little math behind that. Say for every 1,000 cars in town, we as an electric utility pay the regulator, ISO New England, every month. We pay based on our peak transmission charge and peak capacity charge. So combined, that's about $15 a kilowatt month. So if you had 1,000 vehicles charging at 7 kilowatts, that's 7 megawatts. Well, those peaks would, if they added that onto our existing peak, say if they're all charging at 5, 6 o'clock in the afternoon, that would add $119,000 to our utility cost, which is $1.2 million a year. So as these vehicles are added to the system, it gets very significant. How our incentive program works it's evolved over time, and it's multiple things we've done. We went to the dealers and negotiated aggressive pricing. Most of the customers lease the electric vehicles, so we came to agreement with the local car dealers. There's about 3 of them around that we talked to that have standard pricing. The customers, it's confusing when you get your first electric vehicle, so we didn't want to have them have to negotiate price, so we did that for them. We also have a website where we allow the customers to schedule a test drive at their home, and the dealer will come to them, so the customers don't have to go to the dealer and walk in, schedule a test drive. We rebate $250 towards the cost of a level 2 charger, and it's not a smart charger anymore. It's just a basic charger. And we rebate the customers $8 a month to be in our off-peak charging program. So you can bring your own charger now, we call it. And with the use of smart meter data, we can tell when the customers are charging and if they're complying with the off-peak charging. So again, we do at-home test drives. We've had a lot of promotional events, ride and drives we call them. We will set up at the farmers market and other events that happen throughout the year in town. The dealers will bring their cars to the event, and customers can see the cars, sit in the cars, and test drive the cars. We use direct mail. We use all the social media platforms like Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. And then we have a specific website with a lot of information. If you go on this website, it gives you a feel for what it costs to own and operate an electric vehicle versus own and operate a conventional gas-powered vehicle. So that website gets a lot of action, and there's a lot of links on how to get to us through that website. So the progress we've achieved to date, We've done hundreds of test drives with the residents. They've actually acquired 116 electric vehicles at the last count since August of 16, which is much higher than the previous adoption rate was. It's 13 electric vehicles that the town has. We have 5 in Braintree, and Braintree Electric does, and the town has 8. And it's not 77 anymore. It's actually 85 electric vehicles that are enrolled in Bring Your Own Charger in the program with a monthly incentive. That's about 73% of all the residential vehicles are in this program. And of those 85 electric vehicles, it's about a 97% compliance rate. Again, we can see when they're charging, looking at the advanced meter data, we can tell if they're charging off-peak or if they're charging on-peak. So we have a very high adoption rate. So the program's working. It's getting people to charge their vehicles overnight instead of on-peak. And then finally, we've begun to replace our fleet of large heavy-duty utility trucks with plug-in hybrid bucket trucks. These trucks are a big benefit. They'll run about 6 hours on the battery. When you're driving them, the diesel is still running, but as soon as you park, the diesel shuts off, and the boom and all the auxiliaries run on the batteries. So it's quieter in the neighborhood. It's safer for the guys because they can talk to each other without yelling over the cost of, without yelling over the sound of the bucket, the diesel running. And we're finding that the linemen like using them. So that's pretty much all I have, and I'll turn it back to Richard.
All right. Thank you very much, Bill. And thank you to everyone for your questions so far. We've received a lot of them. We'll be following up with you after the presentation and responding to those questions. I'm going to ask a couple here now in our last few minutes to our speakers and ask them to try to answer as quickly as possible to try to get through as many as we can. The first question, and I want to start with Lindsay on this one, is thinking about rates that work for customers and respond to their preferences. Can you talk briefly about the subscription rate and how that met needs of what customers, specifically EV customers, were looking for in your jurisdiction, and if the concept of a simple rate, easy to understand and market, played a role in that decision?
Yeah, absolutely. Our Plug-in Everywhere program, the membership to our public charging stations is also a subscription. It's $4.17 for unlimited usage to the public charging stations. So it fit in line with that idea, and more industries are moving to that kind of pricing subscription with, Netflix, gym memberships, et cetera. So there's winners, there's losers. Some people use it a lot, some people don't use it much, and it kind of balances out, and it gives the customer predictable, consistent pricing. A big reason why customers buy electric vehicles is that consistent pricing, unlike gasoline, which fluctuates. So this just really feeds into the concept of why people go electric anyways, and it's a big satisfaction point for our customers.
Great. Thank you, Lindsay. And I want to return back to Bill. And Bill, can you elaborate a bit more on the AMI load disaggregation technique that Braintree Electric opted for and what the customer response has been, and some of the benefits of the Bring Your Own Charger approach?
Yeah, so when a customer acquires an electric vehicle, they call our customer service department and notify us that they've acquired the electric vehicle. We register them in the program, and we start to rebate them at the rate of $8 a month. They then we help them, if they have to, program their car. All these cars are programmable, so the car only charges off-peak. We don't do anything with a meter in the customer's home specific to the car. All the customers have advanced meters in the town, so we can see their load profile every day. So we'll know that it's a level 2 charger creates a spike in your load. So we'll know when they're charging. We can see the next day when we look back at the data. So It's really simple for the customers. Once they program their car, all they have to do is come home, plug it in, and it won't start charging until, say, 9 o'clock at night, and it'll be ready to go the next morning. So the program's been very successful. The customers like it, and the compliance rate, like I had said, is very high.
Great, thank you, Bill. And before I ask the next question, just a reminder to everybody in attendance today to please fill out the survey before you leave. And a question back to Tony. Tony, we had a number of questions come in about the breakdown between whole house and EV only time of use rates. Can you quickly just kind of highlight what the breakdown looked like from the report?
Sure. So in that report, we surveyed 50 utilities, of which offered 64 different rates, EV rates. Of that 64, about half, just over half, so 35 of them applied to the whole home. 21 of them were EV only rates, which would require either a secondary meter or a sub-meter. And then there were actually 8 rates that gave customers a choice between whether they wanted to have all of their load on the EV rate or just the EV charging portion on the EV rate. So there's kind of there's a few different ways to offer this rate, and we've seen kind of an equal amount of whole home EV rates as well as EV only rates being offered.
Great, thank you, Tony. And I want to go back to Jeff. Jeff, we had a number of questions come in about the PEV meter solution. One of them was the average cost. Could you speak a little bit on that?
Yeah, so part of the reason that we went in that direction is that the only incremental cost for us to use that approach is just the meter itself, because the folks to enroll in the program, you would already have to have a 240 volt circuit. So there's no incremental cost to the circuit. That's something that the customer would have to do regardless. So adding this meter to the circuit that will either be added or already exists is very simple and straightforward for an electrician to do. So that's the only incremental cost. Again, I don't want to quote any meter prices, but they're I think generally in the ballpark of about $100 for that equipment if you quote on the scale that utilities do. So it's very, very important, and a lot of value comes from that cost due to all those things that I mentioned. Perfect.
Thanks, Jeff.
I did also want to make one more comment. I think Bell is using Sagewell, I believe, for their AMI validation for customers. So just wanted to make folks aware.
Yeah, that's correct. This is Bill, yep.
All right. Well, I'd like to thank all of our amazing speakers for working so hard to help move the U.S. EV market forward and for taking the time to be with us today. Again, before you leave, please complete the survey. Tell us how we're doing. I'd also like to thank my co-host, Andrew Jordanic, for working behind the scenes to make this happen. And of course, thank you to all our attendees for joining us today. I hope you have a great week.
Thank you.
Thank you.